implies that the many suppliers that were there had more competition for their produce. Depending on how they display their produce, that one attracted the different customers or the few customers. So some of the responses that the traders, adopted, as you can see on this graph, is that some were able to seek for alternative marketing channels. For instance, the social media, and that's why I would also emphasize the need for ICT. The social media actually became a very important platform for selling produce. There were also home deliveries that most of the traders also adopted to. Some of them had to move out of their structures to go to new locations so that they can have new customers and also get new supplies. We had a lot of them, for instance, also on the road. The existing traders, actually, they told us they had to move from their convenience places where they sell their merchandise to go to places where they could be able to tap more demand for their produce. And others were took up to, bringing in new commodities that were demand driven and of course could fetch more profits, as well as changing of the displays. The cardboard sale, I think we didn't have this before, especially for sale of produce. It's something that has come, and we have seen some people are still doing this, which is a convenient method of selling produce. The other question was, this display coming to the screen. Who was the most affected players along the value chain? So here you see we have classified farmers, the brokers, the transporters, the suppliers, traders, and consumers. And these were perceptions that were given by the traders themselves and the consumers, asking them, how do you think these different actors along the informal supply chain for food have been affected? And you can see across the issue of poor prices from the farmers. The farmers were not getting enough market. They were incurring more post-harvest losses due to delayed correction of their produce. And of course, all these led to less profit. Brokers, we know in Kenya we use, brokers are the intermediaries between the markets and the farmers. So there was a lot of loss of job, and of course, poor prices where they could get good commissions for the produce. Transporters, we know in Kenya we rely heavily on small transporters that bring produce to the market, so they also lost some jobs, and of course even others, big suppliers as well as the traders. Consumers, on the other hand, faced high food prices in some cases, where some of the commodities could not reach the market, and of course, as I said, some of the consumers lost their jobs, so they could hardly buy, the food bundles that they used to buy before COVID because of less income and hence less purchasing power. That was this was perceptions which were similar, the perception from the new entrants to the informal supply chain, which are more or less similar to the ones given by the existing traders. Looking at the gross margin analysis, here we just seek to know, some of these new market entrants going to continue with the businesses that they were doing. The first figure here shows the trend of the new entrants. You can see after COVID, when COVID came in March, we had about 10% of them entering the market. Then this shot to in April up to 26%, and it declined. It declined as we moved towards the end of the year. This survey was done in late November up to early December. So as you can see, the monthly trend, the traders entering the new market, and of course went down. And comparing the net profit made by the existing and new informal food supply chain traders, as you can see on the table, we saw that the existing traders were making a little bit higher net profit than the new entrant. Of course, they sold more because of, they have gained this market knowledge than the new entrant. They sold more at less price, but they were able to get more profit due to the economies of scale. So this was a question we're asking, are you going to continue the new entrants? So about 80% of them, very optimistic, they said that they would continue, and some of the reasons they gave was that the business, some of them perceived their business to be profitable. Some of them said this was a new source of livelihood, so they would continue. Others didn't have any hope for a new job opportunity. Others viewed as a side hustle or a self-employment, which was convenient. And those who did not, of course, say they would not continue, a small percent, of course, they were hopeful that they would resume work. They also, 27 of them say that the businesses were not as profitable. And others say the job was more, it was hard, and of course, they didn't have the proper business skills to continue operating the business. But I just want to highlight that one case of a successful new entrant who moved from a cupboard to actually opening up a kiosk, and actually she was very successful in terms of income, and she has continued to operate in this the kiosk from moving from a cupboard, and it was very profitable. So as a way of conclusion, as I have highlighted, we have seen that the COVID-19 pandemic actually shaped the informal food supply chain. There were disruptions that are evident from the new traders as well as those existing in those markets. And of course, different actors were affected differently. And those disruptions actually brought about innovative strategies, some of them that can be enhanced, and even for future business. As a way of, I think Oliver actually highlighted most of these policies that probably that can be considered in terms of resilience and because this was quite a blast, and if we do not have response mechanisms that can be incorporated in our food supply systems, then we end up suffering from high food prices, and this, of course, in the long run leads to food insecurity, especially among the peri-urban area, in the urban and peri-urban areas where most of the people actually already hit by food insecurity issues. So we suggest that policies should focus on resilience and diverse supply chains that ensures sustainable economic recovery, as well as considering economic cushioning of SME through low-cost loans and tax-free trading license, as well as promoting regional trade that could support sustainable food system in Kenya and also in Africa at large. The government should also set up monitoring of stock, prices, and distribution systems so that we can ensure they step in where market mechanisms fail. For instance, if we have such an epidemic. And of course, other things that I think the incentives, the tax reliefs, and the subsidized input could also help some of those actors from taking up from where the pandemic hit them. For instance, in supplying subsidized commodities to farmers and all that. But that is in the long run, and we didn't even get to go to the farmers. So this is something that needs more study to see how different actors were affected and what could be done to those different actors. So I want to add there and acknowledge the different donors that support ICIPE's work. And I want to say thank you for listening, and the questions and the comments are welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Beatrice. Please, let's give her a round of claps for a good presentation and also saving us more time. I think we can take 3 questions from the floor. Burning ones, the others you can send to the chat. And let you respond, please.
Hello. Thank you, Beatrice, for the nice presentation. My question is, because of the informal food supply chain sector that has come because of the pandemic, has this increased the market for the fruit farmers and vegetable farmers? Is the market bigger than before? Because we have those people who are entering the market in the informal way. Has this increased market for the fruit and vegetable farmers? Thank you.
Can I go ahead and answer? Oh, thank you very much for your question. As I said during our survey, the traders already complained that they were not able to get enough supplies from the farmers, because even the transportation system had been affected. So at this juncture, I'd not be able to say that there is more market for the farmers. But if we have proper infrastructure in place to enable transport, we all know that farmers actually sell. I mean, most of the produce come to Nairobi, for instance, through these small transporters. So once we have a good facilitation or infrastructure that allows the transporters to be able to bring this produce from the farmers to the traders, we can be sure and we can say with confidence that they would have more market for their produce. But during our study, the traders actually say they are still not able to get enough supplies from the farmers because the transportation had been disrupted as well. So this is a question that we need to think about maybe for the next research. Thanks.
Okay, another question, please. You can raise your hand so that we... Okay, that's one. Any other? After there, another very burning one as we close that question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Beatrice, for your good presentation. Okay, my question is, you're considering the informal food supply chain response to COVID-19. So were you considering only some actors, like the traders, or were you looking at the all food supply chain? And in case we're looking at food supply chain, do you also consider maybe from the initial point of input supply, the effects of also the response of actors in input supply to COVID-19 pandemic? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your question. It's true we are looking at the informal food supply chain, but as I said, our target was actually 2 main groups. We looked at the traders, and these were grouped into 2. The existing traders, those who are already selling those produce, and then the new entrants, those who entered in because of the pandemic. And the second category was the consumers. And I'm sorry I didn't highlight some of the perception other than how they were affected. We have more results from the perception of the farmer, the consumers, on the informal supply chain. So those are the two main actors that we looked at. However, we also asked them about their perception towards how the other actors, mainly the farmers, the transporters, the brokers, how they have been affected, how they think those other actors have also been affected, because these are the people they interact with when they get their supplies. So we actually didn't interview beyond the traders and the consumers there. But obviously, as Kirui has also pointed out, these are we expect that the impacts actually trickle down up to input suppliers of the those who supply inputs for the agricultural production. So we expect the spillovers of the impact also to the other supply chain actors. Maybe Charity or Vivi, she's here, she can also add something, if George allows.
Yeah, this is, we'll have the last question and then we allow the, where are you? The person who will be having work with Beatrice, are you in?
She's online.
She's online. Then let me allow the last question, then she can come in also.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. I was just wondering, because I saw your work focused mainly in the Nairobi metropolitan area. I'm wondering if your study also within the Nairobi metropolitan area went into the informal settlements. And if at all, you had actors who were engaged in this kind of business and they came from the informal settlements, and maybe what were the outcomes of that study?
Okay, thank you. Actually, that's a perfect question for Charity.
And also find that these will go in up to the consumers. You find consumers saying there were shortages of supply. So all these linkages all the way from input providers to consumers, you would find such shortages. And that's why when you advocate for tax policies and say that, for instance, having zero-rated tax-free for inputs, it's because that when this cost of production increases to the farmers, and these farmers also have challenges of missing markets, what are we translating to the consumers? Their bundle of choice of what they would want to buy for their household definitely reduces, and all this impact will be felt all across the whole economy. Yeah, so that are the 2 points I would want to cite. And then also on consumers' perception about how they felt about whether the carbon sales were more preferred than the other, maybe the existing traders and the temporary structures. We are trying to put this as an additional paper, but maybe just to preempt, we can say that even the consumers had the perceptions that the car boot sales offered more clean products, because the way they would handle the product was better than the people who were just laying their product on the ground. And so the innovativeness was observed, and of course the farmers were affected, and whether the farmers would have more market share and having more product in the market, maybe in the long run would observe that, but currently definitely you can see the reduction in income, you can see the challenges of reduced market margins and profit margins, and I think these are things that maybe in future we would want to look and have a perspective from the farmer's eyes or the input provider's eyes. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Beatrice, and what's the name? Thank you very much. I think we want to give them the last clap as we move to the next session. I'd like to invite Dr. Presenters, please. We have Dr. Chacha and then Dr. Dixon Otieno. Welcome.
So let us clap for our moderator, Professor George Owuor. Thank you, Prof, for taking us through that session.
I would like to take this opportunity to invite Dr. Babere Gerata Chacha to give his presentation. Please welcome.
He was here but has left because of an emergency. And he did request me to do the presentation on his behalf. I did agree because I remember 2 weeks ago he did contact me to seek my perspective on an issue. And I have done some work on public participation in Nakuru County. And when he did mention about the UGEC, I said it's okay. I hope I can try to do the presentation on your behalf. So the topic is the response of the COVID-19 pandemic on the indigenous communities, the case of access to emergency health care among the UGEC of Kenya. This is an ongoing research work that has adopted a mixed approach. The first one is desktop approach or research that has done a review of a number of government documents, both at national and county levels. That's Nakuru, that houses the UGEC community. But later the research, the study will do a participatory research where we'll seek the perspectives of the policy implementers and the target community. And therefore, the study will seek to answer the following questions. How does a global disaster or pandemic of this magnitude affect an indigenous society such as the UGEC? Number two, how does the pandemic evoke international human rights instruments that Kenya is a signatory to? And number three, how does the minority group, that is the UGEC, respond to global pandemic? Now, the outline is there. Quick introduction, the background information. So what is the problem? COVID-19 and the UGEC, emergency healthcare. In terms of the introduction, The Ogiek community is known as the caretakers of all plants and wild animals. That justifies the study location, that you have a community here that ideally seeks to preserve the environment and try to answer whether the same community receives equal attention from the government just like others. And therefore, when the government declared the COVID-19 pandemic a national disaster, the measures put in place by the government were meant to benefit every other citizen, every other community equally. But we are going to see that the Ogiek community might have not received the attention that other societies or other communities received. And as I said, this is a special community that lives in a forest, has a population of about 30,000 people, and basically survivors of early inhabitants of East Africa. They are hunter-gatherers community. But something has been going on for some time now. That the government gazetted the Mao forest where the Ogiek community lives as forest land. What happened here basically is that you have a community that is being evicted from what they call home. And when that basically happened, the community has issues. One, this is a community that is seen to be slightly poor compared to other communities in this country. The question of healthcare system comes in again. Does the community have adequate sanitation, information, clean water, food, etc.? Now, the community is almost being rendered homeless, as I said. And this is because of the encouragement by, first I've said, the gazettement of the government of their place, their home, as forest land, government land. You have encroachment by farming communities and commercial timber harvesting companies that have a keen interest in this land. Did I move next? Yes. Secondly, the Ogiek are facing not there yet. Sorry. Yes. The second one is facing the extinction through the rapid process of assimilation by people known as pseudo-geek communities. And now when the COVID-19 I can't see there. I think I'll just do it from here. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying now to introduce the aspect of the pandemic, COVID-19, why it was a threat to the Ogiek community. As I said, the community has poor access to health care. The local medical facilities are under, mine has gone off. Seem to be having a double tragedy here. Can you help me? It's just gone off. Sorry, I hope the chair, you'll give me 1 or 2 more minutes. As I said, the local medical facilities are under-equipped, understaffed. Let me now examine quickly the effect of the COVID on the Ogiek as a community. 3 key issues here come out. I'll do it in summary. That they were excluded from the interventions, given that most of the interventions targeted the urban and formal populations. Number 2, the COVID-19 Emergency Committee at the national and county levels did not have a representation from the communities. Number 3, the budgets that were done during the COVID-19 excluded, again, this community. That review has been done and confirmed. Let me go to the emergency health care. This is a right to every other human being, and the rights are guaranteed in various international, regional, local human rights instruments. In this section, we have listed the rights again to emergency health care. As I said, for example, Article 251, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But the revolving question, the question here is, in terms of emergency health care, if you are badly injured, for example, you have an arrow lodged somewhere in your body, you rushed to the nearby hospital for treatment, can that hospital that attends you stop everything else and attend to you? Does it happen in this country? Basically, we have the question of a deposit of 30,000, 50,000 before you attended to. I wanted to speak to the aspect of the Constitution of Kenya, especially the 2010, that has been praised worldwide as the best constitution. Do we practice what the Constitution envisages? And this is in reference to the Ogiek community. In terms of this emergency health care, various forms of emergency cases can range from trauma to physical injuries. And the challenges to access drawn from the physical, financial, cultural, and service barriers. The Ogiek community faces the challenge of illiteracy, the language barrier, and poverty that compound the communication. There is therefore need to improve the varied aspects of the quality of delivery. Before I do the conclusion, I wanted to say that the study, once Dr. Chacha goes to the field, will seek to collect what he has already collected through the review of documents, the government documents, government policies, and what exactly happened what happened in the field when the government was trying to address the question of the COVID-19. The conclusion, the right to access to quality emergency health care should be or is a fundamental right access to people. Across the globe. It is embedded in most of the legal provisions of both developing and third world countries, and that implementation and enforcement of the same seems to face significant barriers, especially in Africa. Further, there is need for enabling legislations and policies from both national and county government levels to demonstrate and enforce access to quality emergency health care as envisioned in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this is ongoing research work. The researcher will be moving to the field. That's why you do not see study results. I hope given another opportunity, he should be able to present the study results. Thank you very much. That's the conclusion. I hope I'll answer questions if they are on his behalf.
Thank you, Dr. Magena, for the presentation. You have presented within time. Very good. I'm just recommending that you make proposals on how this study can be improved, because it is still
Ongoing.
infant stage. So, any proposals of how this study can be improved.
Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. I think that is a very interesting study, and it touches a very emotive issue in our country. We've known the Ogiek to be the poster community for issues to do with marginalization and issues to do with land evictions and so on and so forth. I'm just very curious, and maybe in your study, you would want to, because you mentioned somewhere the Ogiek community was not taken care of when the government was going on with the issues of COVID mitigation. I think it would also be good to make a comparison with the other marginalized communities, because I think there are several marginalized communities in the country, so that it doesn't come out as an alarmist statement, because the issue around the OGEC, the OGEC communities normally draws a lot of emotions. And also, there's the issue of the OGEC community and the issue of the pseudo OGECs. Maybe you'd want also to clarify more on that. There's been a lot of issues on, we are not very sure who is an OGEC and who is not an OGEC. And also, there was also a point where you mentioned about the OGECs and the education. I think of late there have been some notable OGECs who are actually very well educated, but maybe during the data collection, maybe that one will come out clearly. Thank you very much.
I just want to add to what he has said. I think there is a tribe number 43 in Kenya now. I think it's called Ilsami, something like that. So there are also tribes that have been actually over the years even left out of the 42. That means OGEC was even recognized than them. Can that person also proceed and talk about that?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I also think the study is an interesting one, and it will be more interesting if we are talking about a marginalized community, and we said this community preserves and protects the forest. Okay, so then that means there should be an aspect of collective action or some kind of rules and regulations or social capital that exists between these people and how they kind of manage the forest. So does this social capital or collective action that they exhibit also make them resilient in any way in terms of getting those facilities they need in the community, maybe healthcare and other things? Yeah, I think that will be very interesting.
Thank you. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, I have the capacity to answer on behalf of, or respond on behalf of Dr. Chacha, but let me say this. This is one of the marginalized communities in Kenya that is called a caretaker of all wild plants, plants and wild animals. Supposed to get a lot of attention from the government in terms of policy making, in terms of every other aspect. But the study seeks to identify why the government of the Republic of Kenya has continued to marginalize, discriminate this. And therefore, it's not only the government of Kenya. I think I've mentioned about the pseudo communities. There are people who have moved into the forest area in the name of, business people. They now call themselves the OGEC. But they are trying to move them out, edge them out of the forest, gradually because of personal interests. And that is the business. And therefore, the aspects proposed by colleagues here are key in terms of trying to understand or make the study better. I will write this down and share with my colleague when he's back. He has to attend something. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Dixon Otieno Kello from Egerton University, and I'm going to present to you the research that I did in Murang'a County. And I've coined the topic. In the program, it has been written, Impact of Agribusiness Support Services in Dairy Agri Enterprises in Murang'a. And, but I've just coined it as the benefits of including agribusiness support services in dairy agri enterprises in Murang'a. So this was part of my PhD work. I just graduated, I think, agribusiness support services. And when I'm talking about these support services, okay, on my scope and of my study, I was looking at some support services. And these are support services that the county government of Murang'a have really concentrated on it to support and to empower these smaller farmers. Example of those support services is what we call the group marketing, whereby you find that the county government is trying to encourage the farmers to sell in groups. And we find that they have really come up with different cooperatives. The county government has supported different cooperatives. These are examples of the cooperatives. And something interesting about Murang'a is that they have their own cooperative. They call it the Murang'a Cooperative Creameries, whereby all the small cooperatives, they sell their milk here. And this is one way of supporting these farmers so that they can be able to increase on their incomes and the prices that they get from their farms. Other support services are, I looked at the production support service, and there I find that the county government is also helping these farmers access to improved feeds, that is silage, hay, and also there are those artificial insemination support services whereby they're encouraging farmers to adopt these as a way of improving the progeny and the generation of the animals, and also to increase on their milk yield. Also, the other support services, like the ones that I've coined as curative and preventive, these are related to vaccination and deworming. Now, I also looked at access to credit, which I called it financial service. And we find that nowadays there are so many financial institutions that are coming up with services to support smaller farmers. If you go to Murang'a, you find that they're encouraging farmers to take loans to buy cows and to invest in that sector. And this is they are in form of loans. And lastly, I also looked at business plan training service. And basically the reasons why I came up with this as a support service is that my interest or my area of specialization is in entrepreneurship. And one way of knowing that people have been talking about farmers, are we market-oriented or we are not market-oriented? So I also wanted to know if access to this training, we find that in that county, there are so many organizations that are training farmers on business planning or doing farming as a business. So I also wanted to know, does it have an effect on their income and productivity? Okay. So it is important to understand the benefits of these services in terms of if these farmers are using or utilizing these services, does it improve on their productivity or does it improve on their income? Now, the contribution of my study to literature is basically that most of the study, they are focused on access to these services separately. Like you find that people have done study of impact of access to financial services. Others have looked at impact of AI on productivity of the animals. But for me, my contribution, I wanted to look at what is the impact of multiple usage of these support services. So I was looking at combination of these support services, not separately. So the two research questions that I was looking at, actually these are two papers that I've combined. The first objective It has already been published. It has been published in a journal called, it's a Springer journal, and I'm going to share with you the link. And the other objective, so the first one was to determine the agripreneur preferences for those support services and their willingness to pay for the support services. And the last one, the second one was just basically to look at the effect of these support services on the income and productivity of these dairy agripreneurs. My study was in Muranga, and the reason why I chose this county, I've said that there has been so many interventions. The county government, NGOs, and also private sector, they have really concentrated in that area to support and also to commercialize the sector in terms of the dairy industry. So my sample size were 682 dairy agripreneurs who are they are distributed among all the study areas that I looked at. So I used multi-stage sampling. Basically, I chose Muranga purposefully because of the reasons that I gave, and then I focused on 4 sub-counties within the county, and within those 4 sub-counties, I chose 2 wards, and within the wards, I was able to visit the villages. Now, lastly, the respondents were selected using systematic random sampling, and I used different methods in terms of the data collection. The main method that I used was through survey, but I also used some secondary data to back up on my literature review. I also did some focus group discussion. Now, the focus group discussion, it was just to elicit, to understand the different support services that the farmers are getting from that area. Now, the analytical strategy, I used 2 methods. I used choice experiment. Choice experiment was, this was an experimental design whereby I presented some choice cards to farmers to know which support services they prefer in terms of, they are presented with cards, and these cards had different attributes that are related to those support services. So farmers were asked, among those attributes, which one would are they willing to pay for? So in all those attributes, there was a price that was attached to it. So farmers would choose, I would prefer this, or I would not prefer this. So this was an hypothetical choice experiment. And lastly, I used a model to analyze the choices, which is called mixed logic model. And for the second objective, I used a model that is called multinomial endogenous switching regression. So these are my findings. So the first objective, I wanted to know the preferences. So we had different attributes of support services. So I wanted to know which support services they prefer. So we find that those support services, we had group marketing and the base. So it was like, you have this support service and there's another option. So for example, we're asking them, would they prefer to sell in group or they would prefer to sell individually? So the base for group was selling individually. And when you look at the other support services was business plan training service. So the base was, would they prefer to have training in business planning in running the agri-enterprise, or they would not prefer? So it was either yes or no. And for curative service, the base was, which one would they prefer? Would they prefer having curative support service or preventive support service? So all these attributes, they had bases. And the last one, for artificial insemination, the base was either they would prefer to have artificial or access to improved feeds, which is silage and hay. So when you look at the results, we find that group marketing had the highest coefficient. And this means that these farmers, they really prefer to sell in group. And basically the reason is because of the interventions that the county government has given. They have really motivated these farmers that the best way you can sell your milk is through group, because we find that in the dairy sector it's really dominated by middlemen. And these middlemen, they offer farmers lower prices. So the best way these farmers could get higher prices from selling their milk is through coming in group. They do bulking, and also they have higher bargaining power. Unlike if you sell alone, you have 5 liters of milk, a middleman comes and tells you that I'll buy at 20 bob. But if you come in group, you'll sell even at 35 bob. And actually, the mean price that these farmers were getting from their milk was 34 bob. Now, when you look at access to business plan training, it had a negative coefficient. Now, this means that this farmer did not prefer, they did not prefer getting training in business planning. And this was an interesting finding, because we are saying that for farmers to be able to commercialize, they need to know how to run their business as a business. But we find that most of our farmers, they are not willing to pay for business plan training. Now, this made me to go and dig deeper. And when I dig deeper, I found out that when you look at the mean score, the mean age for the group of farmers that are, most of them, the mean was 56. So if it is 56 in terms of the mean age, it means that most of the farmers they're very old. And when you look at the mean the experience, in terms of the experience, most of them had a mean of 18 years. So we find that the dairy industry is still dominated by old people who are, I think they prefer adopting their experience than getting training on business planning. Now, another thing is that also business plan training is a new concept. And, our farmers, most of the training that they've been getting from the extension officers has been training on increasing on their productivity, but not training on managing their business or managing the enterprises as a business. So that's the reason as to why that had a negative score. And for curative support service and artificial insemination, these farmers, they preferred having, for example, they preferred having curative support service vis-a-vis preventive. And preventive were things to do with vaccination and deworming. And the reason as to why they're preferring curative service is because our farmers, they are still not market-oriented. They are going to treat the animals when they see the animal is sick. So and also some of them are giving reasons that vaccination and other, they are still expensive to them, they cannot access those services. So the only way they could do is when they see the animal is sick, that's when they'll treat the animal. Now, when you look at the willingness to pay for this, that is linked to this, we find that farmers were willing to pay this amount of money for those support services, but they are not willing to pay. When you look at business plan training, they are not willing to pay even 2,400 Kenyan shilling to access training in business planning. So it means that our farmers still, they're not ready to pay for training. And I think that's a mindset, because they've always been, training have always come as a free thing for them. So this is something that we need to think of, that for our farmers to really commercialize, they should be ready to pay for this, especially the training services, unlike the way we usually just take them, tell them there's a training, can you come? So they have taken it as a normal. So the other results, we find that they are willing to pay for those amount of money for those services. Now, for my other objective, the second objective, I also wanted to look at the effect of these support services. So what I did, I came up with combination of those support services. So the first support was production, financial, business planning, and cooperative, which is group marketing. So I had different combinations, and this I generated a different combination according to the different support services the farmers were using, the 682 farmers. So you find that most of the farmers had a combination of production and financial support service, which was 160. Others were having a combination of farmers who are using all the 4 support services were 119. And also I had some farmers who are They are saying that I'm doing farming for hobby, so I don't need any support service. The animal is just there to eat, and if so it was 11 farmers were just seeing it as they're not ready to use those support services. So when you look at the effect of those different combinations, you find that I was looking at effect in terms of on productivity, the productivity that they get, and the productivity I measured in terms of the liters, the yield, divided by the number of cows that were being milked. So you find that when you look at effect of the different combination, there was, for farmers who are using, the ones that I've marked, they're the ones that had effect. Let's look at the effect for all the services. We find that the one that we say that is associated with it is the farmers who are using those 4 services. And the other one that's not associated with it is if the farmers were not using those services. So we find that if farmers were using the 4 services, that is production, that is the last one, they would increase their productivity by 7.9 units. That is for farmers who are using those 4 services. And then also, for the farmers who are not using the 4 services, and they decide to use the 4 services, they would still improve on their productivity by 17.0. So you find that utilization of the 4 services would improve the productivity of the farmers. Also, when you look at the, I'm going fast because I've been given 20 minutes. Also, when you look at in terms of the effect of access to... Yes. So, so when you look at the effect of on milk, you find that the effect, farmers who are using, the first one, farmers who are using financial support services and they're not using other support services, they would improve their income by 12,184. And also, if those farmers who are not using financial and they decide to use that financial, they will still improve their income by 1,800. And lastly, farmers who are using production, financial, and business plan support services, both those who are using and those who are not using, they would still increase their income by 26,543, and those who are not using also would improve their income by 10,515. Now, what is my conclusion? My conclusion is that utilization of combination of those support services would significantly improve on the milk income and productivity, as you indicated, and also farmers were willing to pay for some support services like group marketing, curative, and artificial insemination, but they are not willing to pay for business plan training. So the take-home message is that, number one, we need to increase linkage between agribusiness support service providers and the dairy cooperatives. So in terms of, we have found that farmers, they prefer selling their milk in groups. So these dairy cooperatives, they need to be supported. And it means that service providers, they need to collaborate with the dairy cooperatives. And the last take-home message is that there is need for entrepreneurship capacity building programs for dairy farmers. And this, we should put emphasis on business planning, doing farming as a business. They also need to be taught about financial literacy. And also, most of our dairy farmers, they're really stressed. So also they need to be capacity built on stress management so that they can be more enterprising and resilient in their farming. Finally, that is my acknowledgement. I want to thank my funder, SESAM project. It's a project that is being funded by World Bank. I also want to thank Murang'a, the county government of Murang'a. I want to thank my supervisors, who is also here, one of my mentors. And also, I want to thank also Egerton University for giving me the opportunity to pursue my PhD, which I already finished. So thank you so much, and thank you for listening to me.
Now that the farmers are not willing to pay for the business plan, and you consider a business plan to be one of the means of improving productivity, so what do you think can be done, yet because at the end of the day you inspire to make the farmers to develop the business plan? And because now they are not willing to pay, what do you think can be done about that?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I'll take that question back to the audience because that is what I came across in my study. And because it's a conference, a discussion, most of our farmers, we find that they have always had that from time immemorial. Projects have been coming, they have been telling these farmers, we want to train you on these things, we want to do this. So it has been like a push. Yeah, they have been pushing this training to farmers. So what we need to do is that our farmers, they need to be mentored, they need to be told that for them, these trainings should be a pull from them. They should be a necessity, not like we are telling farmers there's a training somewhere here, come and attend. So they'll always, all these trainings, they've been free for them. So there's need for advocacy. We tell farmers that if you want to be a real business person, you have to invest on skills. Because our farmers, they are so much focused on, if I go for this training, they want to see the money that comes from what they are doing, but they don't see the long-term effect of the training that they're going to get. So that's something that we need to do a lot of advocacy, tell them that you need to invest on skills. These skills, you need to pay for them, and the long-term effect will be improving on your agri-enterprise. But maybe someone can even add on that. Thank you.
In your research you said young people don't do dairy farming. What do we need so that we can, or what do you suggest that we need to venture in dairy farming as young people? Thank you.
So my take-home message for the young people is that we are going to the university and we have neglected farming. You find that even the mean for, it was 56 years, were the farmers. Because as we go to the university, after we finish, we go and look for white-collar jobs back in Nairobi and this major town. So I would encourage these young people, when you go home, show interest. Tell your fathers, your mothers that I want to take over this business. So that is a challenge for the young people that we need, when you go home, let's not show, most of the time we are not interested in what. We say, yoni kazi ya mom na dad. So it's a challenge for young people. When you go for your long holiday, always try to show interest. Go help your fathers, your mom in doing the farming. And then after some time, once you finish school, go and take over the business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Allow me, Chair, to congratulate Dr. Okello for his graduation, for graduating in a PhD in agribusiness management.
Thank you.
So, my question is, you're talking of the benefits of agribusiness support services. And what I see is like how you came up with how you look at the benefits. For example, you say it's improving, those support services are improving productivity and so income. I don't know if you also consider the cost, because when you talk of benefits, it's like now you have the net income from what you have from the proceeds. But when I look at what you did, it's like maybe you just look at the effects. You look at the effects of those support services on productivity and income, and not the benefits. Because benefits, I was expecting like you do something like gross margin analysis, where you look at the cost and also maybe and the outcome, so that you can have the net income, so that we can now say these are the benefits of these support services. Because these support services, they may be costly. So at the end of the day, it may increase income, but when you consider the cost, that income may be also negative. So I thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Maybe to react to that, when you look at the ones that have coined as income, the ones that have called income, the way I generated the income, I asked them the costs. What were the costs? And then from the cost, I also multiplied the price they get from milk. The price they get from milk, let's assume a farmer was selling, had a yield of maybe 10 liters. And then I asked them, what was the selling price? I get the amount of money they get from selling the 10 liters. And then I deduct that from the cost they had incurred from all the getting access to those services. And that's how I came up with that income. So basically, I had some gross margin analysis in my thesis. Thank you for that comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. for your presentation. I like the rigor in the analysis. But just one issue, this finding about training with a negative effect. Suppose you look at training broadly so that we don't focus on formal, given the age of the respondents. What is it that at policy level, what is it that can be done so that we strengthen informal training, for example, extension, including even farmer field schools, so that we don't get this averseness of the farmers towards training.
Thank you for that. And I think that's the way to go. And last week we had a workshop, a dissemination workshop that we organized, and the reaction was the way people are getting. That was the main take-home message about the training. But the discussion was, our farmers, the way we do the training, we should not do it as the formal one, because our farmers, they are old, they have experience. The best training is the way you have said, we need to have field days, and there's also that aspect of agritourism, whereby instead of bringing farmers and sitting in a class, why don't we take these farmers to model farms? Like, for example, if you go to Kiambu, there's a lady called Paris. She's one of the chair lady in Githunguri Dairy Cooperative. She has a very small parcel of land, and she's really getting high yield from her cows. So instead of telling these farmers, come and sit down in class, we take them to these model farms. They learn, they'll get what we call the experiential learning, and they'll be able to benefit from that training than the formal sitting down, giving them notes and modules.
Yes, I also want to congratulate the 2-week-old Daktari. Yeah, congratulations, Daktari. My question is a follow-up from Prof. In the sense that would you consider experience as also some level of training? And if that is also a way of learning, and from the target area or the study area, you've also said that there's been a lot of investment or contribution to providing this kind of services for free. So instead of trying to push this kind of training as in down the throat of farmers, I think it's good for us to also acknowledge that.
Let us pray. Father, in Jesus' name, that has just passed, we pray that you may help us as we go on with the other sessions. We also pray that you may